Welcome back to the show, everybody. Beyond Recovery. My name is Matt Gardner, and I'd like to welcome my special guest today. His name is Beau. Beau, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for coming on. Yeah,
Yeah,
been
man,
looking forward to
excited
this.
to be.
Yeah, like you had a little eye injury there. We were talking about beforehand. We kind of postponed our initial meeting, but man, that sounded kind of. Did you understand like how you got the scratch, or where did you pick up the actual scratch to your eye there?
Well, it's funny because when I got up, we had our interview, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, this is such a lame thing to say, but it's like actually my eyes almost shut, and I'm thinking, he's
Yeah.
gonna be like, can that dude come up with a better excuse?
No,
But
nothing like that. Yeah.
no, so I just scratched it somehow in the evening, just sleeping, and woke up and it
Oh,
was swollen, and then the scratch went to my eyelid, and then for 3 days I basically just about 2 or 3 days just sat at home in the dark and
yeah, right. What else are you
watched
gonna do?
watched some sports, man,
Sports.
and some movies, and it didn't really,
Yeah.
because it was sunny out, and every time I go outside, I
Just
just
like,
squint, and it was just
yeah,
so. But we're all good, man. Crisis averted. So,
that's
yeah.
great, man. Good to hear. Good to hear. Speaking of sports, I'm very interested to talk to you about. We'll jump around a bit, but that's one huge part of your story, I imagine, right? Like you drafted by the Florida Marlins. You and I were talking about it in our messages back and forth. Like huge nostalgia for me. I remember when the Marlins came to be 93, we mentioned, like when I was like, man, it was like such an exciting thing, these expansion teams coming to baseball. So the fact that you were drafted by the Marlins, super cool. So that's a big part of what your story when I talked about that. But yeah, like even before we get into that, Bo, let's get back to, I always like to give an open forum to the new guests to, what was your origin story with like alcohol, drugs and alcohol? What was it like growing up for you? How did that sort of set the table for your relationship with alcohol? If you can walk us up to basically the point where right before it starts kind of turning on you, what was the like original relationship like with drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, great question. I won't be too long-winded because, man, this story goes on forever. But but we've all got one. We all didn't
Yeah.
arrive at recovery on a winning streak. Or we wouldn't
Yeah.
we wouldn't have made the decision to get sober. So,
Fair.
first of all, just a little context, back context. I'm from Tennessee. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in just outside of Memphis in 1973, and my father is a Vietnam veteran.
Oh,
And so really, and I'm the only alcoholic, substance abuser in my family. I think I may have a drunk uncle somewhere, or two in the family tree. I think we all do somewhere. But
oh yeah.
as far as my immediate family, it's just me, who turned out to be an alcoholic and addicted to drugs and this and that. So, excuse me. So kind of what set the stage for that, Matt, is just extreme violence, dysfunctionality in my household. My father left us real early when I was 4, and my mother was actually giving birth, or had just given birth to my sister. We were in Memphis, and my dad, I don't even call him dad, I don't even know what I call him. Anyways, my father moved to Dallas, and he split on us, and so was my mom, my newborn sister, and myself. And they got back together. Unbeknownst, we don't even know why to this day. And people make wrong decisions. I love my mother so much. So they got back together a couple of years later, and we moved to Vancouver, BC. So there's my Canadian connection.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, so I ended up living a lot of years in Vancouver. I lived in Ontario a little bit as well. So how my drinking and drugging kind of started, I think I took my first drug. I think I smoked marijuana when I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started drinking around that time, maybe 12. I remember Expo 86 was in Vancouver. And our friends and I, or my friends and I think we probably were 12 or 13. And we dropped LSD, acid for that, we were into drugs, alcohol, all that kind of crap early. And what led to me is that, I played sports as a kid. I played basketball, football, baseball, hockey, soccer, everything. And I was always a real good athlete. My father was generally the coach on all my teams. And I understand parents, being tough on their kids. That's okay. I'm all for that, but wanting them to succeed, you're the coach's son. So maybe you have a little more responsibility to, to perform and do this and that. But the lengths to which he took things, in which later on turned out to be a catalyst for my life turned out. So we'll just say dysfunctional in the gutter, to be honest with you, or so a lot of the things he did to me. I always lived in fear of violence. When I was younger, the physical violence was tough. I started getting beat real bad when I was 5 and 6. Just slaps to the face and, punched around and spat on and thrown into walls and all that kind of stuff. And as I got older, into maybe like age 8, 9, or 10 and on, and that kind of abuse stopped when I was around 14 or so. The emotional stuff and the mental stuff really started to take its toll on me. Being, told you're an embarrassment. You embarrass me, you embarrass the family. How could you have done that in front of me? And I'm thinking, well, you're a sports guy, Matt, I think. So I'll give you an analogy. I would go like 4 for 5 with 2 home runs and 2 doubles, and I would strike out my 5th at bat. And I'm like an 8-year-old kid, and I just had a great game, and I'm just having the living shit kicked out of me for the strikeout.
Wow.
And I'm being told how worthless I am and how I embarrassed him in front of all these people. And I'm like, what? All these people? We're not at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, right.
Or Fenway Park. We're in some Little League park in North Vancouver, where there's probably like 15 parents there. So stop acting, and I didn't understand it, because I was always so successful sports wise, and I was always just getting told. And so it got to the point to where it seeped into every facet of my life. I had no self-worth. I had no self-confidence. I was scared to talk to, girls. I didn't know how to approach people. I was scared of my own shadow. I lived in fear. I lived in absolute fear of my father, of life, of living, I started to become suicidal when I was probably around 9 years old. And when I say suicidal, I don't mean like I attempted suicide when I was that young, but I started to have those ideations and thinking, life would be better if I wasn't on this earth anymore, because I can't handle this. I can't, living in a state of constant anxiety. And so the first time that I smoked marijuana, I think I was 11, as I told you. I was like, wow, this is amazing, kind of all my problems went away. And then the first time that I drank, wow, you want to talk about a real boost of self-confidence, or a real boost of feeling like, in my program, which I'm involved into, a 12-step program, it talks about, we have arrived, and suddenly all those kind of insecurities that I had, and all those bad feelings about myself, and all that shame and guilt, and because I always thought there was something wrong with me, of why this was happening to me by my father, why I was being told this, and why I was being physically beaten all the time, and all, because I'm thinking there has to be something wrong with me, because this is logically not adding up. I'm throwing no hitters, or I'm having great games, or I'm scoring goals. I was a goalie in soccer, I had a great game in soccer, or whatever. And so I found an escape hatch, for lack of a better term. And when I drank, Matt, when I first got drunk, I still remember it vividly to this day. I can't remember how old I was. I think I was 12. But I don't know if they still have these beers in Canada. They're called Black Label.
Oh yeah.
I know they were just some awful Pilsner,
it's still awful. Yeah.
And I still, it wasn't the greatest, it wasn't John Labatt's classic or anything. That's anyways, I'm not glorifying it, but
sure.
And so I remember drinking, 7 or 8 or 9 of those things when I was 12, just 12-ounce cans, and thinking, wow, my jokes are funny, and I'm better looking, and people are laughing at my jokes, and people want to be around me. And I feel so like I could exhale completely, because I lived just in a constant state of anxiety. My body was just scared to death all the time. It's like living in prison. I don't know if you know a little bit about that background as years went on. But so when I drank, everything just went away. And I just felt like I could just kind of be one of, and not have to worry about anything. And so that led to a lot of bad stuff, man. A lot of, I continued that through my early teens and through high school. I really continued it. I got sober in 2016.
Right.
So yeah, so I continued it all the way up until then. I had bouts of sobriety, a year here, a year there, things like that. But I never addressed any of the underlying issues that were affecting me, that caused me to drink and drug so much. There's a ton of them too. A lot of it was the childhood stuff. A lot of it was the damage that it did to my ego, my psyche and my mental state of being. A lot of it was, look, let's face it. I like the way it made me feel.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat that either. And a lot of people want to say, well, the only reason that I drank is because I was escaping, or the only reason I drank is because I was victimized. And that's just not the case with me. I don't live in victimhood at all. You'll never hear me ever live in victimhood. However, I did for a long time. And that held me back big time. I blamed everybody and everything else. And I finally came to the, how do I say it? A real turning point in my life was, okay, yes, all these things happened to me, and maybe they had a huge part of how I turned out, alcoholically, drug addicted, all the other stuff that came about. But I know that I'm sick. I know that I'm not going to get better trying to do this crap on my own. So I have got to take responsibility of my life in the present, moving forward. That doesn't excuse the things that happen to children or happen to men or happen to women, abuse type things. It doesn't excuse it at all. People can be victimized, but for me personally, Matt, and I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I would never speak for anybody else on this subject, just my own personal experiences. I had to get out of that victimhood mentality that I was living in, because it was trapping. And it was justifying. I'm like, well, if you had my life, you drink too, or just
Yeah.
shit like that.
Gotcha.
And when I finally said, hey man, you're a grown adult. You make the decisions in your life. You control the narrative of which way you want to go in life. And you have proven time and time again that if you continue to drink and use drugs, you are not only going to destroy yourself, even worse, you're going to continue to destroy every last loved one or person in your life. And so I finally had to make the decision to get sober for good. And it didn't happen like that, but I've been sober about 6 years now, and I do daily work, not hard work. I just have a different way of living, and I've made so many, recouped so many wonderful relationships with people, and I have a whole lot of self-confidence and self-worth today, and I do good things, and my esteem is good because I do esteemable things. I don't sit around and steal from supermarkets and rob people money when I'm homeless, or just sit around and drink and get high all day and be useless to anybody. I'm not useless to people, and I'm not useless to myself, which is nice, and I have two beautiful children, which I lost contact with them for a long time. They're in their 20s. My daughter's 20, she'll be 22 in September. My son will be 26 in August. And there was a lot of years in between where I was an absentee father, broken promises. Your young kids, they look up to their dad, and they're like, wow, maybe he's telling the truth this time. Maybe he won't go back to jail, or maybe he won't go back to prison. And I would always inevitably do something to break their hearts. And so we became estranged. Yeah, we became estranged for a long time. My mother, most of my family, this is a victimhood statement kind of part that I used to play. I used to say, oh, everyone left me. But that's such bullshit. I pushed everybody away out of my life. Nobody left me. I pushed everyone out. They had no choice. My mother in 2009, God bless her, said, Beau, you're out. You give me no choice. You're out of my life for good, forever. You're killing me financially, emotionally, spiritually. She said, she had just had a minor stroke. She had a lot of health problems, and I was just a terror. And we nowadays are, best of friends. She's one of
That's
my,
great.
I can count on, just we have an amazing relationship, and it's no, I've got a chance to make amends to her for the things that I did in the past. And she knows how much I love her. And what means more to me is, is that she tells me she loves me and she's proud of me. And so that's all the recognition I need is from my mother, knowing that I'm doing the right thing. I don't need recognition from anybody else that I've turned my life around or this and that. I know that I have, and I know that I'm doing well. But to hear my mom, who once said, "Beau, you're out. I love you. You're my firstborn child, and I will always love you, but I never want to see you as long as I live ever again."
Wow.
To now, fast forward years, and we talk weekly. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with my sister and their family. They all live outside of Denver, and I visit and we hang out. And she always texts and says, "Man, we loved having you here. It was so fun. We can't wait to have you come back." And I mean, and that's just a miracle of sobriety, Matt. That's one of a million. So I hope anyone who hears this little story about my mom and I, because a lot of alcoholics and addicts get estranged from their families, and they get cut off, or they push people out, and they think that life is over, and I'm never going to get my life back, and my family hates me, and my employers hate me, and the world hates me, and so I'm just going to go drink my life away.
Right.
That doesn't have to be the case at all. So there were some I want to jump back, I guess, into my early teens. Not really sure how much I should go into. There were just a few really nasty incidents
Please
of
do.
child abuse that I kind of went through. Sure. Yeah. And I talk about that a lot, just because I've dealt with it. I've done a lot of work on it. I'm good with it. And I want to preface this by saying, I have people ask me, "Have you forgiven your father?" For a long time, I'd say, "Hell no. How could I forgive that? Sociopath and psychopath." But the answer today is yes, I have completely forgiven him. Now that comes with a caveat that I've forgiven him for my own sanity,
Gotcha.
my own well-being.
Yeah.
I don't condone what he did to me. I don't condone what parents like that do to children, or any kind of abusers do. But I can't really hate my heart. I just can't do it. And so I've gotten to a point where I had to do some work on it, a lot of work. And I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of neutral towards him. I'm ambivalent, I guess. I don't like him. I don't hate him. He's just not part of my life. And that's just fine with me. I haven't spoken with him in probably 15 years, once in maybe 15 years. And there's no sense in me holding all this crazy grudge and hate against anybody, because when I'm filled up and balled up with hate, I'm no good to anybody, because I'm constantly in my own head. You know what I mean? I'm constantly getting angry and mad at somebody who lives on the other side of the world. He lives in Europe. I have no contact with him. He doesn't hold any power over me anymore. So why should I continue to hate somebody? I don't, like I said, so I had to come to a place of forgiveness for my own sanity, because I love helping people. I love being able to be of use to people, especially fellow alcoholics and addicts. And if I am angry and built up, and I'm talking about, having tolerance and patience for people and love for people, I can't be a hypocrite. So, and I've got to be at my best when I'm trying to help guys. And I work with a lot of guys new in sobriety and things like that as well. So I just kind of that was kind of a long-winded preface to that, but I wanted to just kind of get that out there. So I'll give you a couple examples. I think I was 12, grade 7th grade, two different pronunciations. In the US, we say 7th grade, Canada grade 7. But so I've lived in both countries, so it's kind of cool. I kind of know all the different little deals. But so we're playing basketball, and I was a real good basketball player. And I was where my hero was Larry Bird.
Yes.
In the Celtics, and I always wanted to play like Larry Bird. And so I was a 12-year-old kid, and obviously wasn't Larry Bird. It was never going to be Larry Bird. But at that point in time in my life, I either wanted to be Larry Bird or I wanted to play for the Boston Red Sox. Those were my dreams.
Awesome.
And so I was working on some stuff during the first half of the game, and I turned the ball over a couple times, shot real poorly, just had a lousy first half, whatever, it happens. this, 12-year-old kid again. And he's thinking this is, Madison Square Garden. And I'm thinking this is a grade school elementary gym. So, with all these people around,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
thousands and millions watching across the world. Yeah. Because it's so he's so dramatic about it. He's just yeah, whatever. And
Yeah.
so he grabs me and says, you are embarrassed. Does this whole spiel? You're such an embarrassment. How can you do this? He takes me across the street to these bathrooms at this old gas station. And I tell this story on occasion. I laugh about it, but it's a serious thing that happens to children and just the abuse. And so he opens the door, and this is back in the 80s, probably mid 80s. And it's just nasty old grungy bathroom, and you've got the trough where everybody, all the men stand. And then you've got the stalls. And he shuts the door, he locks the door, and he throws me up against the window, the little window above the sink. And then he kind of smashes my face into it, and my lip starts bleeding, and he starts going into his tirade about how I'm embarrassing him and I'm just wrecking the family name, and how could I do this to him when he's put in so much work with me and helped me to become a good player. And granted, I'm like 11 or 12 years old. And then he opens one of the bathroom stalls, and he says, get on your knees. And he shoves me down and grabs my head, and he starts dunking my head in the toilet and starts flushing the toilet. And it's full of piss and shit, feces and all this stuff. And I remember he's pulling my head up. He's like, are you going to do it? Are you going to stop this, embarrassing behavior? And I can't even talk. I'm like gasping. I've got water coming down my throat. I stink. I'm throwing up because it's just horrific, man. And so he pulls me up, dusts me off, cuts the blood off my lip. I've got this blue stained orange uniform because those urinal cakes they put in the toilets, and it's just a mess, man. It's just, and I'm just scared to death. I don't even know what just happened to me. And we go across the street, and looked a little weird, my uniform was all banged up, but parents were kind of either scared of him or enamored with him, or they were just kind of took the out of sight, out of mind. He's not my kid. He's not my problem. My father's real fierce and intimidating. So a lot of people just didn't want to stand up to him. And a lot of people didn't really know what went on behind closed doors either. So I had a real good second half. I think I scored 18, 20, 22 points in the second half and had a great game. And that was just kind of stuff that happened in my house. We would go to baseball tournaments, 45 minutes from home, an hour from home, outside of Vancouver, close to the US border in Bellingham, Washington, or Seattle. It's going on the way to Seattle. Not sure how familiar you are. Are you from Edmonton? Or okay, so you're
I'm from Prince George, so just north of
okay.
I'm fairly familiar. Like my older brother does live in North Vancouver, actually. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you kind of know the deal then. So I was out in like say Langley or Maple Ridge or close to the US, Wally, places like that.
Yeah,
Surrey.
totally.
and we would come back. It would be midnight, there's no cell phones or anything. And he would kick me out of the car, halfway between the ballpark and our house. And he would say, get the hell out of the car, get out, and he'd throw me in some ditch, throw me on the side of the road, and go the same thing every time. You're an embarrassment. How could you do this? You embarrass the family. Like, it was just like a broken record, man. And again, I'm thinking, well, I just got a trophy that says MVP on it. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Like, I'm not Ted Williams, man. I can't, I'm not Babe Ruth. I'm not, I can't, I'm sorry. I can't live up to these expectations. And he was so sadistic that he would leave me there in the middle of the night and then come back about 20 minutes later and say, are you sorry for your actions? And I would, of course, in my head saying, what actions? But verbally, I'd say, yes, sir, I am. Can I please, he'd say, get in. And then right when I get in, he'd take off again and just like play that stupid game, that, and it sounds like funny, the guys goose in the car when their girlfriends try to get in, just for a few seconds, a few feet, but it's not funny the way he did. And I look back on it thinking, God, what it's just a saddest. It's just sadistic. And he would do that a few times. And finally, an hour and a half later, I'd get in the car. And then he would take me to ballpark at like 2 a.m., turn on all the lights. He'd get in the shed. We'd get the balls and bats out. And he would be about 30 feet away from me at the most, about halfway between home plate to the pitcher's mound. And I would be actually against the backstop. And he would bash line drives off me all night, all morning until about 2 till 4 a.m. And it made me a real good fielder.
Sure.
But when you're taking ground balls from, 10 yards away, literally, like line drives, grown man who was a real good athlete, bashing them off my chest and my knees and get your effing glove on the ground, this and that, and bash one, and take one off the cheek. And it was just crazy. And my mom was so scared she couldn't say anything, because he was just insane. So it was just stuff like that. And so I turned to drugs and alcohol to deal with a lot of that stuff. Then, like I said, I loved the way it made me feel, so I kept drinking and drugging. I had one more incident that really affected me. We were downtown Vancouver, Seymour, Granville area, seedy, late 80s, all the drugs, hookers, porn shops, all that stuff. And
yeah,
it was myself and my parents had divorced again by then, my stepbrother and a couple of our buddies, skating buddies, skateboarding buddies, and we were looking for weed. And I was kind of the alpha of the group, and we were hanging around these awful neighborhoods where all this crap went down in bigger cities. And this one dude says, what are you kids doing? Or not kids. So what are you guys doing? He goes, you looking for some, right? And me, of course, I said, yeah, we're looking for some weed. Can you hook us up? And he says, yeah, follow me. So I follow him up into his apartment. My buddies are waiting downstairs in the alley. And it's kind of one of those ones where you got to hold onto a ladder to get into the, it's just a gross old apartment.
Yeah.
And with like one bathroom on the entire floor, and then you walk into the little dudes. It's one of those places.
Yeah.
And awful. People shooting up the hallway and stuff. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. But I'm loving it at the time. I'm like, wow, this is like the big time. Little did I know.
Yeah.
So I walk in there, and he's got a little room in his front apartment, and he's got a little small little something room in the back. I sit down, and he has a friend sitting on the couch, and and the guy says, wait here, I'm going to go get some weed. So get an eighth of weed. You got $40 or whatever it was. I don't, whatever. And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. The guy on the seat says, you want to drink? And I said, sure. By that time I was just kind of a dumpster for drugs and alcohol, anything I could do. And I still remember it to this day. It was Wild Turkey bourbon. The weird things that we remember. I'm almost 49, and this was 35 years ago. And I took a shot, and we'd been earlier, my buddies and I. Then about 5 minutes later, took another shot, and I was nice and kind of drunk, and started to wonder, going, what's going on here? I came here for the weed. And the guy comes out, and the first thing he makes eye contact with the guy sitting beside me, and then he looks at me and says, have you ever tried heroin? And I said, no, I have not. And that's all I said. And I'm like, I'm drunk, at the time. And he says, both of them kind of say, well, do you want to? Would you like to? And they're like, oh, it's great. It'll make you feel great. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I was just game for anything. And I think I was just turning 15 at the time. And I'm sorry, I don't have it pinned down exactly the exact age, but I was either late 14 or just 15. But so this was a really terrible thing that happened. So the guy ties my arm off, hooks it in a spoon, blah, 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 does his thing, shoots me up. And to this day, as you and I, Matt, are talking right now, I'll never forget how that made me feel. And that's a scary thing, because what happened after that was horrific. So these two men started to rape me and sexually assaulted me pretty horribly. And when it was done, just gave me a bag of weed and said, get the hell out of here. And so that was something that led me down the years to a lot of night terror, a lot of really wondering who I am, questioning myself, why I would let myself, like, I always blame myself for that. Why would I let myself let that happen to me?
Yeah.
And I've come later on in life saying, well, I was a 14-year-old kid who was easily manipulated, and it's not my fault. And I don't shoulder any fault or burden for that whatsoever anymore. But so I get down, down in the alley, my friends are freaking out, and I show them the little bag of weed I have, and everything's fine. And I never said a word until about 30 years later. I've just talked about that. Maybe I started talking about that like 10 years ago, and there's been a couple incidents like that. But here's the problem. That kind of stuff happens to kids all over the world, and it's terrible. Sexual abuse and verbal and emotional. I want to be very clear. My father never perpetrated any sexual abuse on me whatsoever. It was always just physical and verbal and emotional. But me being an alcoholic and a drug addict to the max, to this day, like I said, I still remember more about how that needle made me feel, that heroin made me feel, than the actual attack that happened on me. And that
Mm,
was something that I could not, it took me years and years and years to get over, because it is so powerful.
sure.
And just kept going back to it. And it led to a lot of bad things in my 20s and 30s, crack cocaine abuse. I got hepatitis C from sharing dirty needles. I was shooting methamphetamine and cocaine together, speedballs. And I was in the streets a lot, living in homeless shelters, prostituting myself for, well, to men, quite frankly, for
Mm,
drugs. And I'm a straight male. And I looked at those guys. I justified it by saying, well, women do it to men, so why can't men do it to men? And then, sorry, excuse me. And then, but I was a walking soul. I was dead.
yeah.
All I lived for was, how do I get crack cocaine, or how do I get whiskey or wine, or how do I get heroin or meth or anything to alter my substance to make it through the day. And unfortunately, that was a way that I found that I could feed the monster
Mm,
addiction. And there were a lot of things that happened in between, like the baseball and subsequently failed baseball career and stuff like that. So I was kind of long-winded there. I apologize, but that's just kind of a lot of how I got to my addiction and alcohol abuse. Um, yeah. So like I said, there's baseball in between. There's penitentiaries. I've spent about 10 years behind bars, total. Just a lot of stuff that affected me real bad, but I'm squarely and firmly 100% turned it around today, and have for years. So
it's an amazing story. Like, thank you so much for being, so 100% honest and just being forthcoming with all that information. And wow, dude, like what an incredible story. And like you said it before, the miracle and the relationship with you and your mom now. Not only that, just the fact that you and I are having this conversation right now, to
yeah,
me, just from the context of what you're just giving me, certain points that really stick out. And then as you mentioned, there's so many other points in between. Truly a miracle, dude. Like, it's amazing. What an amazing,
yeah,
inspiring story. A lot that I was just jotting down some notes. I'm sure you noticed there's a couple of things I definitely want to expand upon. But before I do that, dude, thank you so much for sharing all that. What an amazing, you know, and just like sad,
it's
and the fact that you can come at it from such a different angle. Like you say, you don't have this victim mentality you once did. You've grown out of that. So all this growth that you've done is amazing. We'll definitely get into that. So thank
sure.
you. Thank
And
you.
no, thank you for that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem sharing that stuff anymore. The reason, and I'll be real quick,
Yeah.
my story is not proprietary to just myself. I mean, it happens to so many people. You wouldn't believe stuff similar to what I just told you, what I've gone through happened. People just don't talk about it because it's
Right.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's shameful. And the more that people keep it stuffed inside. So if they can see somebody like me who's like, okay, well, he looks pretty normal and he's doing well these days, and he's, recovered on a daily basis from his issues. Why can't I?
Right.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm very open about with my stuff too. But
It's a
I didn't become open with my stuff until I was ready to adequately explain it and then adequately help other people. I didn't want to just word vomit on people and then
totally.
have them say, well, can you help me? And I'm like, no, not really, because I haven't even helped
Help
myself yet.
myself.
So
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great outlook on
yeah,
it. I definitely want to get into how you
yeah,
were able to help yourself and what that looked
yeah.
like. But a question for me, for you, that immediately came up for me is like, do you feel that one pivotal moment of you, getting the first hit of heroin and then having the sexual assault led you down the path of being able to, like you say, like prostitute yourself out later, or would you have gone down that road anyways? Because it seems like a lot of barriers, a lot of boundaries broken in that part, and it's just like, okay, well, that sort of set the table for you to, okay, well, I've already broke the seal on this, so
Well,
I'm going to continue with it.
it's exactly it. So I broke the seal. I'd already done it. I realized it worked.
Right.
So that was my life at the time. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I've already
Okay.
gone, I've already gone there. So I can't take it back. I don't get a do-over,
Right.
and I was in such poor state. I was living in a little town called Walla Walla, Washington. And I'd done a little bit of time there, and had and was released, and then I had to go to a excuse me, I'm sorry. I had to go to a local homeless shelter, and then I met this girl and moved in with her and this and that. But I was involved with a lot of the wrong people,
Mm.
and Walla Walla is close to Yakima. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Washington State, but it's a lot of drugs come through there, come up from
Mm.
the southern border, and then they come through there and they're dispersed. And anyways, it's a little town, but it's a real dangerous little town. And I started working because I was just always such a drug addict. Once I would start, I couldn't stop, alcohol, drugs. And so I started, and I'm a veteran. So I started working for this guy at a bar in Walla Walla. And he had a deal for me where I would give him all of my Vicodin that I would get from, painkillers from the VA, because the VA back then, the VA hospital in the US is a hospital for veterans. And they were, back then, they're not anymore, but they were the biggest drug dealer on planet Earth. You could get anything you wanted. You could just walk in there and say, my pinky hurts, and they would give you 3 months of 10 milligram hydrocodones, 10 a day,
Wow. Wow.
And so I would trade my bottles of pills to this guy. And in turn, I would work for him going on dates with people.
Mm.
And then in turn, those people would give me money to go buy crack cocaine, methamphetamine, things like that. I really wasn't into heroin that much at the time. This was like right around 9/11 when that
Mm.
happened. But I was shooting a lot of methamphetamine and smoking a lot of crack cocaine. And at the time, I was, you know, I still looked somewhat respectable. I was skinny at the time, but I still didn't really look like a hardcore drug user. And I did eventually, I scabbed up, and I'm 215 pounds now, 6'4", and I was about 165 pounds at my lowest.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. So I started driving cocaine to in the Tri-Cities back to Walla Walla. That's just a couple little towns in Washington State, where a lot of Mexicans and a lot of cartel, a lot of white people, a lot of black people. I mean, all races involved, but I just got mixed up with the wrong people, made a couple wrong mistakes, and I was asked to leave town like that or face some consequences.
Gotcha.
And so I ended up moving to Spokane. I stole some stuff that I shouldn't have. And they were from the wrong people. Let's just put it that way. And they're
Gotcha.
like, you can
Yeah.
leave or you can stay and you won't be around much longer. And I'm like, you don't have to
Wow.
tell me twice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went to Spokane. Yeah, and I'm very lucky to this day. And so I went to Spokane, Washington, which is the underbelly of just crime. I mean, Seattle's in that state too. Seattle's about 3 or 4 times bigger than Spokane, but Spokane per capita in that state has, the highest murder rate, the highest
Oh, wow.
violent rate, the highest drug rate, the highest suicide rate, highest gang rate. I mean, everything. It's just crazy. So I
Wow.
got mixed up in all that life and became just a absolute walking zombie with the crack cocaine. I lived for how I could get crack cocaine, how I could get methamphetamine. I lived to stay just numbed up, so I didn't have to face the things that I had done previously. But then to answer your question, Matt, I already cracked the seal on it.
Yeah.
And so I realized that's how, at my lowest, how I can continue to feed the monster.
That's right. Yeah.
So it just became,
It feels to me like, just from your story, you have this like tale of two stories, and essentially, because you're still very much able to maintain this high performing athlete. Like you say, you didn't look the part as far as being a drug user until towards the end of your usage, right? So you're able to kind of have this like two personas essentially. Did that feel like that? Does that resonate when I say that? Like, it's the fact that you're drafted by Major League Baseball, you were still able to keep at such a high level, where meanwhile behind the scenes you have this secondary life almost.
Yeah, so I had to juxtapose this life of baseball player, decent family life, or this other life of where I was, getting high and drunk all the time. And granted, this was in high school, so I didn't tell anybody what happened to me at that incident downtown for many, many years, and that was kind of an isolated incident at the time. All the abuse by my father was isolated, but the sexual assault incident that I told you about with the heroin, the first time I did that was, but I was still young enough and I was still in good shape that I was able to still play. And, I talk about the baseball because it's a platform, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm, I was I was far good enough to be, I had I had big league all-star written all over me as far as talent wise. I was offered a contract by the Brewers, the Rangers.
Wow.
I was drafted by the Marlins, but I was a low draft pick the year I was drafted because I kept getting kicked out of schools and losing my draft eligibility. And I had a criminal record by the time I was 19 or 18 or 19, and I was drunk all the time. And so, I had, first round talent, but 71st round head, $1 million arm with a 10-cent head.
Right.
As they say in that movie Bull Durham, it's a Bull Durham reference. But scouts actually used that on me back then. And I remember saying, well, F you guys, man, that sucks, dude. That's not, that doesn't make me feel, I would laugh about it outwardly. But showing up to a game drunk, I would show up one game and touch a 93, 94 on the radar gun, blowing guys away at age, 18. And the next 5 days later, I got to start, or 6 days later, I start, Matt, and I'm barely touching 82, and the scouts are like, okay, so this guy reeks like booze. He looks like shit.
Yeah.
He's lost 12 miles an hour on his fastball in 5 days.
5 days.
What's going on with him? So they,
Yeah.
So they do a little dig and they're like, oh, he's got a criminal record. Oh, he's an alcoholic. Oh, he's crashed cars. Oh, he's already got DUIs. Oh, and he's only 18. It's like, yeah. Companies, whether it's Cisco, IBM, Walmart, Costco, the Florida Marlins, whatever, Major League Baseball, NHL, anything, they don't want to invest money in people like that.
Sure.
Because they're just asking for misery.
Yeah.
And, but I did get drafted, and I was a real good ball player. I was a real talented ball player, and years later, I had the most fun I've ever had playing was in a penitentiary prison where I was.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's kind of like the movie The Longest Yard, but for baseball.
But for baseball, and we played every year. We had cops against inmates game, man.
Really? That actually happens.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Man.
That's rad. That's rad.
Not in football. It doesn't happen in football.
Oh, okay.
Because
so
there's serious issues with the contact. Yeah.
Of course.
There's some real bulls in prison. Guys are giant, guys doing life, never getting out, and you're gonna let them play on a football team against some prison guards?
Maybe not.
Officers?
Right? Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. Yeah.
But even for a baseball, you could do a little sweet chin music on one of the guards that's been chirping at you, right?
Well,
you could.
It's more slow pitch softball.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's
but
pretty
it's
neat,
funny though, and I'll tell you this real quick story, and I won't go along with it. But I always played shortstop, and I was always way older than all the younger guys in there, and I was just kicking everyone's ass, and they're playing baseball. And we had a great team, and I was a coach, and it really, I started helping a lot of guys that didn't have good self-esteem and didn't know how to play, and I started teaching them how to play, how to swing properly, how to field ground balls, how to throw properly, turn double plays, things like that. And
cool.
So one year, I think 2000, I can't remember the year, but we're having one of our cops versus inmates softball game, and this one lieutenant, I can't remember his last name, but he's this bigwig in the prison, and he shows up with all his wristbands on and his Oakleys, and he's got eye black on, and he's thinking he's just Mark McGuire or somebody like that, Barry Bonds, and he's all jacked up, he's huge, and he's got like the $500 DeMarini bats and all this stuff, and we're used to using like beat up old, like gloves Ty Cobb played with or somebody, from
totally
19, whatever, and busted up old bats. And I'm playing shortstop, and this guy gets up with his $700 bat or whatever, and hits one out, hits a home run over the fence, and I can't stand, like I used to pitch, and I gave up home runs. on occasion. But if somebody sat there and watched it, we call it pimping it. If someone pimped their home run, it's like, see, I played back in the day where I'm old school, where you don't do that kind of crap.
Yeah.
You don't show me up, you don't disrespect. And if you don't run and sit there and look at it, the guy on deck is going to wear one right between his numbers, first pitch up, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's why guys, so nowadays they don't do that anymore. Everyone's, it's just softer and everyone's, you know, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. So this lieutenant is rounding first and I'm playing short. He's taking his sweet ass time. I mean, he's
milking it.
Milking it. We call it the trot. Slow though. Like, again, like he's, you know, Barry Bonds or somebody. He rounds second. And I purposely turn my back and I'm like, I can't watch this night. And then I turn around and I go, why don't you run your, or no, what did I say? Why don't you stop Cadillac? Cadillacing means you're just taking your time.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, LT, stop your goddamn Cadillac and run the damn bags. He says, what'd you say? And I said, you heard me, man. Dude, you're making a fool out of yourself. You're out here playing with a $500, $700 bag with stupid armbands on and your eye black and your Oakleys thinking you're something else. I said, just, you hit a home run, run the bases, okay? You're playing against a bunch of guys, most of them haven't even played in their life. You ain't shit, man. And I got thrown in the hole for that for like 10 days.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, for disrespecting us. You know, it wasn't 10 days. I think it was like 6 days or something.
Still though, man, what a story.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that was kind of funny. And I was mouthy back then and all that stuff. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun because I kind of my father stole so much fun, you know, my childhood from my sports that I ended up having a lot of fun playing basketball. Prison's not fun, but getting the escape of it.
I got
being able to get out with the guys and get teams and have tournaments and these are really big deal. We play for prizes. We play for like something seems so nothing on the real world, like loofahs or body wash or nice shampoo or nice toothpaste or a pair of sweatpants or stuff that we really don't get in there. And so the winning team gets that, or we could pay exorbitant prices for that kind of stuff on the commissary. So if the winning team gets all this stuff, so there's a lot at stake, you know, plus you have pride and you can talk smack to all the other teams. And then word gets, and then there's different prisons throughout the state, each state. And I think there's like 7 or 8 in my state of Idaho, which is not a big state at all. There's like 38 prisons in California, but it's the United States, land of the penitentiary. You know, but
no kidding. That's crazy. Wow.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started on that. But
that's unreal.
There's like 38 in California. I mean,
that's
there's 30. Almost 40 million people there in the state. But but word goes from pen to pen, you know, hey, those guys up there are good, you know, and guys want to, and so when guys get transferred on the bus upstate or downstate or to different prisons, you kind of carry with you a reputation.
Sure.
And that reputation can be good or bad or, you know, whatever. And so people are always trying to, you know, and you gotta stand up for yourself. But it's cool. It's a different way of living and it sucks, but there's also beauty that you can find in anything. And that was one of the things that I found.
Was that a big perspective shifter for you? Is like your time in prison? Like, I mean, I want to get to the stage of like, where did this transformation mentally, specifically, mentally and spiritually, of course. Mental is kind of processing something, and then you're, you know, spiritually, you kind of align with this processing that you've done in your, or however it may have looked for you. I'm interested in that. Like, what was the big turning point for you to be able to release that victim mentality, to start having these relationships rekindled, as you put it, with your mom and such? When did that happen? And what kind of tools or help did you have along the way with that? Because that's a huge, man.
That's a huge thing. And I had a profound spiritual experience that I still live to this very day, you know, and it wasn't, I don't know if it was a burning bush moment. I think it was just I came to the realization that my life is always going to be like this if I don't change. You know, it was closer to my last bid that I did in prison, which was, I think, 3.5 years straight the last time. And this was a handful of years ago. And I got sober in prison my final year. It's very tough. It's difficult to stay sober in prison. Everything you want is in there. Drugs,
really,
homemade hooch, pruno, prostitution, gambling, the guards, the nurses, correctional officers, everyone, you know, it's just a free for all. It's just the Wild West. And it's all gang run, and so anything can be had for the right price. And but prison's all about respect. So you have to respect people, and you'll get respect. You don't have to be in a gang. You don't have to, but if you act disrespectful to people, then you're going to have to pay the consequences. So I always respected people. And I was a little bit older than most of the guys in there some of the times. And so I always respected everybody regardless. And so I received it back. So I really had no issues with guys in there. I mean, there were a few fights here and there, but you can't escape that kind of stuff. That's just,
Sure.
when you have 3,000-4,000 guys all living in a rat cage,
Yeah.
there's bound to be that stuff happen.
For sure.
So Dan, to get your question, I apologize about being long-winded. I'm just kind of in my mind, just kind of thinking back on these days.
No, yeah, take your
So
time.
I had a year, and I had a year left, and I went down to the library at this particular penitentiary that I was in, and I had gone to college before. I'm a high school dropout. I got my GED in state penitentiary. The reason that I was able to get into college and into the U.S. Army is I had high entrance exams. And in the U.S., they're like SAT scores, or they're not IQ tests, but I wasn't a dumb kid. I just got kicked out of schools all the time. So
Yeah.
anyways, I started thinking about, I'm sitting in front of a computer, and we have no internet access, of course, but we had access to different programs, job search programs and things like that. And I'm like, man, I'm in my early 40s. I'm like 43 or something. Like, what am I going to do with my life? Just dawned on me, like,
yeah,
the last 20 something years, this has been my life. And I'm thinking, man, you just played softball better than anyone out there in this penitentiary. Guys 20 years younger than you, and you're killing it. And then I started thinking, you wasted all that stuff away, and then you wasted all your other God-given, abilities away. And we all have God-given abilities, or whatever given abilities you want to say. I'm not here to preach one way or the other, and it scared me, Matt. I scared the hell out of me. Mom would send me $100 once a year on my birthday with nothing, just happy birthday, Mom. That was it. And that was the extent of, because she had, I told you earlier that she cut me off, but she felt bad. I don't know. And so I'm like, this can't continue. This absolutely cannot continue. And I had about a year and a half left to do on my sentence. I had just gotten parole, but they pushed my parole date out and said, we want to see some more good behavior for another 18 months or so. I said, well, I'm not going anywhere for another 18 months, and I don't ever want to live like this ever again. I don't ever want to come back to any of these places. I don't want to live behind prison walls and guard towers and guards with rifles and razor wire and concertina wire. I don't want to live with another guy in a cell. I don't want to shower with 20 guys ever again. And I don't want to be in such physical pain all the time and not have any care, decent medical care. And I just don't want to ever do this again. And I don't want to. And then I started thinking, gosh, it's not even I started thinking, this is all about me, what I don't want to do. Then I was like, this is pretty selfish, dude. And I started going to AA, and I started going to service and any kind of, chapel and any kind of things that we could do to get off our unit or out of our cell. And slowly but surely, I had this profound change in my heart to where it became more about, I don't ever want to lie to my children again. I don't ever want to lose my relationships again, or I want to regain my relationships again, or I want to feel good about myself so I can be better for other people, because I saw the way that I was starting to affect other men in this prison on a positive note. I was talking about recovery, and I was helping them, learn how to shoot a jump shot or play baseball, softball, whatever, just little things like that. Sounds silly, but it does amazing things for someone's confidence when they just start improving in things, and suddenly these guys walking around the prison yard with their heads down and timid and won't raise their hand when it's time to play for a softball team. Suddenly they're all kind of puffed up and feeling good and swinging the bat well. And then they're asking me, because I was a little bit older, there's a lot of older guys than me in there, but they're like, hey, have you been in recovery before? And I said, yeah, man, I have actually. And it's the way to go. It's the way to go. Because I had pockets of it throughout, a lot of rehabs too, to get off the streets and then go to, so I understood the recovery game a little bit. And then so the profound change for me, I guess, to answer your question, Matt, it became more about how I can start helping other people.
That's cool.
How I can, kind of lean into my background, kind of learn from the mistakes that I made, and then how I can ultimately leverage everything that I've learned in my life, the good and the bad, to help other people. And I hit the ground running years ago. When I got out, I went straight to a meeting. and I haven't looked back, and I won't look back.
It's amazing.
On a daily basis.
Yeah.
So
So
it was,
cool.
so yeah,
Yeah.
just
Just
had to be in service, man. Had to
yeah.
get out of my head.
And that's so it sounds like a lot of that was literally just you coming to terms. It's like this come to, they say the phrase, the come to Jesus moment. You had this moment where you're staring
Totally.
down. It's so, okay, I'm going to go down this road. It's a crossroads. I'm going to go continue this, or am I going to change? And for you to be able to do that on yourself, and then to, like you say, use everything of your life experience to help other people. It's amazing. I know service is a big thing for you. I recommend anybody follow you on Instagram. You have a great Instagram account, very well-rounded is what we talked about before we got on this interview. You address the good, the bad, the ugly, right? It isn't this, highlight reel. And I love that about you. So it very much drew me in. That's what drew me into wanting to talk to you. Right. And I love what you said. You mentioned, the baseball thing is sort of a platform to this incredible rest of the other story. That's just kind of like the like you say, I can see where you use it as a platform, but the actual story in and around that and everything else to do with it is absolutely incredible, man. So congratulations on your ongoing sobriety, everything you're doing for the community and all the folks you're doing. I really appreciate you coming on and being so forthcoming and honest with your story, which is, you went through some shit, my friend. That's pretty crazy. So thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And I'll finish it just real quick. I think that some of my favorite people are the people that have walked through fire and come out the other side. And if we can do that and just keep hope that things will get better. And I had to never give up hope. We become forged in fire, man. We become miracles, and other people can see that and it gives them hope. And then other people see them and it gives them hope. And then before you know it, man, you're really affecting lives, for the good. So
I love that.
It's a win-win all the way around. So thank you very much for having me.
Honestly, honor, pleasure's all mine. Where can we find you online? Do you have a website, or you throw your Instagram handle out there for the folks there? I'll throw it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'm at Sober Beau.
Okay.
So just at Sober Beau on Instagram. And then I'm involved in a group called Team Leadership Online. And I've got a lot of neat stuff going on the rest of the year that'll all kind of come to fruition.
Cool.
Next year, I do speaking engagements and things like that. But I have a lot of neat stuff that's gonna happen in the next 6 months or so. That'll really kind of, don't want to talk about it too much right now. Got you. But a lot of stuff is in the hopper. Yeah. So.
I'll tell you what, Beau. Let's have you on in 6 months time when you got
let's
stuff.
Do
we can do a little follow up, right? And you can
absolutely
a little more free to talk about what's going on there. I'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely, yeah,
that'd be rad.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, man. And we'll link these in the show notes, and highly recommend everybody find Sober Beau on Instagram and look him up, and many things coming for 2022. So thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.